Hello traders, welcome to a new video on my good old friend sentiment. So what we're going to be looking at today is the tie.io. This is a site that collects data from social market analytics, which is a data provider that looks at hundreds of millions of tweets to parse through them to look for relevant information that we can turn into sentiment. Now, what I like about this site versus other sites is, one, it is free. So everything I'm going to show you today in this current state is free. Just make an account and you're in. Two is just how transparent these guys are about everything that they do. You know, very helpful docs. I don't typically see this with, data vendors and data providers that I look at on my channel. They tell you exactly how they get their sentiment, exactly how they use their sentiment, how they evaluate it, how they calculate it, and then how they do this. And then they also offer, hey, do you want to trade sentiment on a technical chart? Here's how you do it, and so on. So I just wanted to lead with that just to show you guys a few things that you can do. They have a lot of great data here in transparency and on help. But without further ado, let's get into what is this site and why should we care about it. The first thing that I like to use is this right here. And if you want to get this a little bit bigger, let's hit that full screen button. Now what you're looking at is the daily sentiment as calculated by the tie.io overlaid onto price on a trading view chart. Down here we have tweet volume, as you can see in blue. We can see when we get a flurry of tweets, this is volume, trading volume, but blue is tweet volume. Yes, so blue is tweet volume, but volume is just price volume on Bitcoin. Now up here we can see this is the calculated bullish bearish sentiment. So those who are positive on Bitcoin, those who are negative on Bitcoin. Now, before we get into actually how we make money off this and the other tools on the site, one thing I do have to say, there's two ways you can trade sentiment. You can have the belief that sentiment precedes price, so that a very positive or bullish sentiment is typically going to lead to a price rise, and a very negative bearish sentiment is typically going to lead to a price decline. Or you can have a contrarian mindset where you think that too much positive, bullish outlook in sentiment typically leads to a price decline. As in a lot of things in trading, there's no right answer really. I tend to believe on Bitcoin I'm more of a contrarian. The tie.io and the docs that I read and what they do and how they calculate, they tend to, from my knowledge, use more of a precedes price approach, where positive sentiment looks to precede price and vice versa. But again, this is all going to be up to you. I'm going to show you guys some examples of how this sentiment has worked, and we can extrapolate from there. One pretty good example of that is during this uptrend right here. Look at that. Blue is sentiment, the daily sentiment. And what I see is we get a spike in sentiment here, and then we go flat for a bit. But right before we rise, we get a fall in sentiment. What's happening here? We had a price rise, and I think what had likely happened is there was a little bit more, bullish activity. More people thought that the market would go up. But then some people began to get negative or believe that the market was going to reverse. So the market instead, that's where I'm talking about right here, where we fell from 55.6 down to 53.1. The market, after many people thought that it was likely going to reverse, as you can see as this decline in sentiment here, the market rose. Market rose about 1%. Now here's where things got kind of crazy. Price was flat here. And it's in these situations after a strong trend and you see price flat that you want to look at sentiment and see what people are thinking. So that, you can trade off that. For me, I'd want to take the opposite trade, typically. What we see here is quite the dramatic rise. We go from 53 up to 59, almost 60. Just in this consolidation, a lot of people are bullish at this price point. A lot of people were bullish at 10,900. So what does price do? Bye-bye. 6% drop. Now, after price drops, we get a little bit of depression in the market. A lot of social market analytics reads a lot of people becoming a lot more negative. Very negative down here. And when sentiment's very negative, this is when we want to strike. I don't want to say anything because, I'm just revealing how I trade, contrarian mindset. But this might not have been a terrible time to buy. I can totally say that in the short term. If you had bought there, you would have been sitting pretty. Where do you exit? Well, look at this. We had a jump in sentiment right before a price decline. We had a lot of people getting bullish, getting positive, and you can see a jump in the sentiment there. And then price does that. Now, after price falls, you can see that people slowly began to get a little bit more bearish, a little bit more bearish, a little bit more bearish here, until they got very bearish down here and price rose. Now, recently, and you can check this out on my private Discord, we were at this price point here when I shared this site. Now we saw a sentiment rise from here to here just as price was flat. A lot of people were getting bullish and price fell. We had a lot of, positive outlook on Bitcoin at this price point right there, and then price fell 1.5%. Okay? This is not the only indicator that these guys have. They have many of other private indicators as well. Like you can look at NVT ratio, long-term sentiment, relative tweet volume. You can look. I can click on that. I think, is that the same thing? It's the same thing as just, I think, tweet volume. Not really sure, but there's a lot of very cool indicators you can look at here. You can look at the 1 hour price projection. You can see up and how that's changing over time with its algorithm. What is this? Let's see. What this? Here you go. Look at that 1 hour price projection right there. So what the 1 hour price projection is, just to reveal what I'm talking about, is that's right here. This is what the TIE.io predicts is going to happen the next hour. Now, I wanted to find how that was calculated because I'm always skeptical of any kind of price projection without evidence. And they did reveal it. It said, from the docs that I read, if I recall correctly, it said that it looked at tweet sentiment in conjunction with price volatility. Now, it did that by taking more of the approach that sentiment precedes price and not really a contrarian approach. So if sentiment's very bullish, then typically this is going to read very bullish numbers. If sentiment's very bearish, this is going to read potentially more bearish numbers. So you can see here. And if you want to see how this historically has worked, click on price projection chart. And actually, I can see right here the price projections and what actually ended up happening. So you can see that in blue is the prediction, and black is the actual price. So we can see an example such as, I can zoom even more to make this very obvious. We can see here that at this price point right there, that price fell, but the price projection was actually thinking we were going to rise. Why didn't price move with the projection? Well, the reason that was because this means when the projection goes up, we have a lot of bullish sentiment. We had a lot of bullish sentiment at this point in time, but that actually this time led to a price decline. So the reason I want to show this 1 hour price projection and talk about it to you guys is be careful when you use this. This does tend to work well, but know where the calculation comes from. So if you see the price projection moving a certain way, know where that comes from. That comes from sentiment being very bullish or sentiment being very negative, and then you can judge your overall trading approach based on that. So I found that was pretty cool. They also have a sentiment chart with, let me just make this guy a little bit simpler, with bullish and positive sentiment over time. As you can see, I can look at the 1 day, and we can see just how the sentiment has been, and so forth. There's a lot of things on here, and I'm kind of just going over the basics because I want to cover as many bases as I can. One other thing that I haven't showed yet is, let's go back to full screen. I'm going to click the Show News button. Now, Show News is going to overlay news onto price. So I can see what news articles have been posted at what prices. Hey, we had what's this guy? 99bitcoin.com said, something about a Bitcoin news summary. This is interesting. Bitcoin price cooldown risks plunge below 10,000. Now that's interesting because that sounds like a very bearish article to me, right? But look what happened right after a very bearish article was posted. Like, isn't that kind of hilarious? No offense to the writers at CCN, keep doing your job. Finance magnates, and then we had 2 articles here. Cointelegraph, Bitcoin deposit and backed, warehouse protected by $125 million insurance. So you can look at these news. You can kind of make an approach of whether it's neutral, bearish, or bullish. This, I think, seemed pretty bearish to me. I just want to see how much oh God, 3% rise after it predicts that. I mean, to these guys' credit, though, I think they're making a medium-term prediction. I don't think they're making a short-term prediction. But still, it's really interesting to see how the news and sentiment interact with price in real time, especially when you take a contrarian mindset like I do. And we also have a lot of data down here. Sentiment volatility, as you can see here. I just found that these guys just really get deep into the weeds about being very transparent and also really quantifying the sentiment in tons of different ways, as you can see here. Yeah. And you don't have to just do this for Bitcoin. You can search this for, other coins too. It's just that I'm going to just look at Bitcoin today. Oh, I can look at Binance Coin too, because that's another interesting one. Yeah, we should look at Binance too. But before I do that, one last thing that I want to show on this screen right here is one of the cooler features, which is Add Alert. Okay, let's say that I care about the hourly sentiment. I could use NVT ratio. I could use a lot of things. Hourly sentiment's what we were looking at. Daily sentiment was what we were looking at before. I could say, hey, whenever it is above 60, save. And then, if I click this, it's going to reveal my email. But you put your email in and then you click that and then your email will pop up. I would click save alert. Look at that. And you can get an email alert for that too. Oh, this is cool. I've never seen this before. What is it? Would you like to use a pre-sale alert template? Receive an alert anytime a coin moves more than 5% within an hour. Receive an alert anytime a coin is projected in a very high sentiment. Yeah, these are cool things. All right, let's go back to what I did promise. Let's look at the sentiment of a different coin. Let's look at BNB. Now again, my personal approach, this does not have to be yours. I like to take a contrarian mindset in trading sentiment on Bitcoin, and I typically like to take a mindset that sentiment precedes price on other coins. So if I see very bullish sentiment at a market bottom on BNB, I might be more inclined to actually think that we might want to buy. Let's take a look. And I can also look at the 1 hour, or the different time frames, but let's just keep on the 5 minute. Example here, we have rising sentiment. Then just about at this market top, sentiment just went from 72 down to 54. Just a lot of negativity coming in there, and price fell. Right? Price did fall. And then we had a period of time where sentiment just rose much higher to like 75, around 75, and price rose. A complete fall off in sentiment, and it looks like price fell. It's really interesting to see how different coins interact with their sentiment analysis. How Bitcoin can be very contrarian at times that I've found, whereas other coins can kind of just follow their sentiment, just like this. A lot of positive sentiment was coming in, and we just generated that price rise right there. And until that sentiment just kind of dropped off, price never reversed, which is interesting. So that's BNB, but I can also look at every coin at once. I could look at something like this, which is really showing us the sentiment over all of these. I can also look at a more quantitative approach. Instead of looking at those, I could go, let's look at 20 coins. And here we go. Look at that. We can see the daily sentiment on each of these. And I just kind of wanted to look for one that has very, very high sentiment. Oh, Stellar. Perfect. What's going on with XLM here? It's got very high sentiment. A lot of people are bullish on it right now. Let's go find out why. So it looks like in the past with Stellar, have we seen a contrarian approach do well, or have we seen more of a preceding do well? It's kind of hard to say. Looks like Stellar tweets are kind of all over the place. That may be because the tweet volume isn't that high. It's, I think, in the double digits only. So that's not a lot. Double digits is not a lot of tweets. But what I just saw right here is I have a lot of positive sentiment coming in. We went from 39.4 up to 82.9. So just, it looks like a lot of positivity is coming into XLM. And it's going to be really interesting to see when I post this video. Go check where XLM is. XLM is 0.6101 right now. I don't know what's going to happen, but let's see. In 3-4 hours, or maybe in a day or two. Maybe not a day or two, because things will change. But in 3 or 4 hours when I post this video, go check. What's the price of XLM.X on this website here? Is it still 0.61? Is it higher? Is it lower? And, how does that relate to the sentiment trend that it has here? We can also look at the price projection chart, and oh my God, look at that. It's just all over the place. Sentiment chart of XLM. Yep. And I can just, parse these guys down a little bit. Yeah, it kind of looks all over the place. You do have to be careful with some of these coins that don't have as many tweets, because you may get misleading sentiment. That's another reason why I only really like to typically look at Bitcoin for sentiment, just because of how many tweets you get. And just how much buzz there is about Bitcoin. But there typically isn't as much buzz, about other coins. One last thing I do want to see, because I'm just interested, is what do we have that's very low sentiment, but that also isn't like a coin that no one's heard of. No offense to these coins. Well, I've actually, sorry, I've heard a lot of these coins. What am I saying? QKC, yeah. Well, basic attention token is one that I know from Binance. This has very bearish sentiment. I'm assuming, is it because price fell? Is that why? Interesting. Yeah. We just had a complete drop off in sentiment. A lot of negativity coming into BTC. But there's a lot of sentiment volatility on that coin too. But it's going to be interesting to see how this guy plays out. Or, we get a price rise or price fall. XLM, we had that extreme positivity. BAT, we have extreme negativity. But we only have, 52 tweets. So not really a lot of tweets there, compared to something like Bitcoin. But yeah, this site is a gold mine for sentiment. It's free. There's so many cool things you can do with this. And this is something you can use in the short term. This is something you can use in the long term. This could even be something you could use for coins that aren't called Bitcoin. You could use this for altcoins. If you see a good enough of a correlation, then you could look at that as well. Just these 10 coins here, I think, is really cool to look at because you can totally see the relationships like that. Red shows negative sentiment, green shows positive sentiment. You can see on EOS here, we have a lot of positive sentiment coming in, and then we have that. BNB, the period of time where you had negative sentiment and price fell, and the period of time where you had positive sentiment. You can look at, what else do we have? XRP, a lot of negative sentiment coming in there, and so on. Can I also change it like this? Oh, so you get we lost the chart. We lost the chart. All right, I'm going to end this with Bitcoin, as I always do. And the accuracy here shows every single time it makes a prediction, it calculates, or it doesn't calculate, it sees whether the actual price stayed within the upper and lower projections. And it found that 91% of the time it did. If it did fall between those bands. Remember what I'd said before, this upper and lower projection is based on two things, or multiple things, but volatility and sentiment combined. And it typically uses an approach that sentiment precedes price. Whereas I use an approach on Bitcoin that sentiment, we should be contrarian on sentiment, especially after a consistent price rise and then a flat price movement. I want to look at the sentiment there, or a consistent price fall and then a flat movement. Any type of high volatility like that, I want to see how does sentiment react. Do people think we're going lower? Do people think we're going higher? And if we have a large fall and a lot of people think we're going lower, maybe we go higher. You can see some of the tweets that are coming here. Really all over the place. Some of them are in different languages, as you can see. And these are happening in seconds. Like, look, 28 seconds ago, 29 seconds for on Bitcoin. A lot of people talking about Bitcoin, as you can see there. And it parses whether those are bullish, bearish, or neutral tweets based on social market analytics. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for today. Really cool site that I had found. I think someone else had mentioned this one to me before. A lot of other things you can look at, like even shorter term sentiments, very long term sentiments, NVT ratios, and stuff that I kind of showed before. But let me know what you think of this site if it helps you. Thank you to the tie.io for creating this site, and I'll see you guys soon. Happy trading, sentiment.